Good morning again to everybody. We are going to start now with the last session of this refresher training for grants and project management. And today we are going to see very quickly as well, because this is a refresher, but I think it's important that you will know how the closure of the grant works. So we are going through this small presentation. Later on, we will jump into the system for you to see how the closure or the change of this status is done in the system. And afterwards, we will see the most important reports that we can use internally for our daily job in ECC, and some reports in BI that Daniel will explain to us kindly. BI reports that their aim is to be sent to our sponsors, to our donors. So let's start with the grant closure, and it's a very good moment, this one, to remind you the different statuses of a grant. It's very important. If you remember, when we created the grant, we were changing let's say the grants management approver was changing the status of the grant according to the different situations or actions that were happening during the process. For example, at the very beginning, the grant was just created. Then when the donor was signing the agreement, we changed the status to approved by donor, something like that. Then to approved by UN, by us, or on the other way round. So first or second, approved by UN, approved by donor. In the case of the P grant, we had approved by the implementing partner. This is status because this P grant is thought to when an implementing partner is in place. And at the very last moment, and before performing the billing, receiving this income from our donors, we have to change the status of the grant to award operational. Remember this award operational? So here we have our, let's say, grant. We have our donor or agreement start date, and this is the life of our grant. During, this process, we were changing the status, and from the moment on that we change it to award operational is where we start with the grant execution. The status will be always award operational. Here we have the donor agreement end date, and there is a point in this process we can say is, let me, sorry, can you see? Yeah. Just let me, because, yeah. Sorry, me now. Here we are. Yeah. Yes, the life of the grant, donor agreement start and end date. So there is a moment when the project or activity that is funded by the grant is completed, when the project or grant manager will confirm that the closure activities can be proceeded. Okay? So at this moment, the grants management account approver will set manually, will change the status from award operational to ready for closing. This status, as I mentioned, is changed manually by the grants management approver. And since this moment, when the status of the grant is ready for closing up to the donor agreement end date, the following activities must be completed. All existing earmarked funds must be reviewed and liquidated, cancelled or obligated. In this case, funds reservations, funds block, pre-commitments, purchase requisitions, and all obligations, business commitments, POs, fund commitments must be reviewed and approved. Remember, it's the first, let's say, milestone of this closure process. Then we reach the donor agreement end date. We reach this point of the process. Our grant is in status ready for closing, and at this very date, the system automatically will change the status to closing, operational closing. And at this stage, let's say, a period of the closure is starting called operational closing, when this status is automatically changed by the system. During this operational closing, let's say the following actions must be performed in the system. All outstanding business trip commitments, trips, fund commitments, whatever, must be liquidated, canceled, or invoiced and paid. Balance sheet open items cleared, down payments, open payables, open receivables, open items, and GRIR balances. Fixed assets funded from the grant must be transferred, retired, donated, sold, or scrapped. Repayment of loan and borrowing must be completed. More actions. This operational closing is let's say, the biggest part of this closure of the grant. The VAT clearing must be completed. IDC calculation must be executed after the obligations are cleared. The month-end process finalized, posting errors, if any, reversed and corrected with the journal vouchers with every 50. Final revaluation for open receivables and payables must be executed, and spent release budget must be returned, and final expenditures and spent balance are determined to proceed the final financial report to donors. Don't worry about this, it's a very long list. You will have a summary at the very end of this presentation for you to follow when you will have to perform this closing. Okay? So, where are we? Our grant has been ready for closing. When the donor agreement end date was reached, the system automatically changed this status to operational closing, and once all these actions have been performed in the system, there is a manual change of the status called the closing or financial closing. This is the new status of the grant. We have the operational closing, now we jump into the financial closing. This change of status is done by the grants management account approver, and each office has its own trigger. For example, some offices can do this financial closure 1 year after the operational closure, but this is driven by local admin procedures. So the grants user as well should coordinate with the project manager to ensure that the related project or WBS elements are closed properly. They go together. The grant, and if this grant is funding a project, this project should be closed as well. So during this financial closing period, let's say that let me start. We have a financial closing period. Very important, this financial closing status is changed after the final financial report is prepared. So the operational closing has been properly done, the financial final report is prepared, so then the status is changed. And we start this period of financial closing. So during this financial closing, the refunds to donor must be performed, the reprogram or transfer of unspent balances must be done as well, and the cash received from donors, okay? So these actions must be done during the financial closing, and let's go to the last stage that is as well changed by the grants management approver. The status is closed once the financial closing has been properly performed in the system. This status close does not allow any transaction and should be performed when the final financial report is approved by the donors and the refund, reprogram, transfer, and final cash received have been completed. And it's very important because once the grant is in closed status, there is no action is allowed on this grant, and all types of transactions that will charge the grant are blocked. In fact, the users would receive an error coming from the system that, okay, you cannot do anything else with this grant. Okay, So mainly we have, you see, this first stage of the closure when the grant is ready for closing and before the donor funding agreement end date. Then the status is changed to closing, operational closing, and we start the operational closing period. The grant management user will change manually this status to the financial closing, and at the very end, the grant will be fully or totally closed. Here you have a kind of closure diagram, you see. This award status of the grant closing with this status here, and closed the last and final status or stage of the grant. If the grant is extended, the status can be changed from this closing, from one of these three statuses, to the award, again, award operational status, by extending the grant. How? This would require a number of changes on the grant master data, for example, the dates. And I remember that Ada asked in second or third session if the dates could be changed. Yes, in fact, they can be changed. But in this case, an additional billing of the grant, starting from increasing the amount of the sales and posting accounting entries again to recognize this new revenue, would be needed. But this is another process that should be discussed separately, but just for you to know that if the grant is in any of these statuses, it can be moved to award again to continue working with the grant by extending the dates and performing the corresponding actions in the system. If the grant is closed, no more actions are allowed. So it's very important that the grants management approver will be very sure before doing the final closure of this grant. Okay, this close. As I mentioned before, we have here a summary. Milestone 1, the operational closing, all the actions, if they are allowed or disallowed during the operational closing, purchase requisitions, purchase orders. You have here everything, summary, and same thing for the financial closing. Okay, we have the actions that are allowed, what needs to be done during this financial closing. You will receive this summarized presentation, so don't worry about it. And I think that's it regarding the closure of the grant. Just let me jump into the system, because I want to show you, but sorry, because this is production. I don't want to go to production, because we will see later on the reports here, but let me show you. Well, I'm logging in the system. Any question related to, with the closure? Any question, guys?
No. So far,
no questions?
nothing. No questions, no comments.
Okay, but yes, I can hear you. Thanks, Danny. Okay, so let's go into the system and let's check one of our grants that we created. Here we are. The code to create, amend grant, change the status, GM grant. It's always the same T code. Let me display it here. GM grant. So let's type our S1 grant. For example, this one. Here we are. The status of this grant, as I mentioned before, is award operational, and during the execution of the grant, the status will remain award operational. So the activity or the project that this grant is funding has been completed. Next stage, to change the status. Let me do this. Editing the grant. Change the status. Next one. You see? It's award ready for closing. It's the first status of the grants closure process. Award and ready for closing. So it is changed manually. Next status. Here we are. Closing, operational closing. But if you look at the screen properly, you will see that this status is not green, is yellow. What does it mean? Let me select it. We have changed the status, but it is not green. Why? Because this status is changed when the donor's agreement end date is reached. In this case, it's in the future, it's the 30th of June 2019. So the system will keep this status, but not as final status, just as temporary up to the moment when this donor agreement end date will be reached. So at this date, the system would automatically change this status to operational closing, and the next one would be financial closing and close, ready to close and close. Okay, it's very easy, just coming and editing, but the most important thing is not how to change the status in the system, because this is very easy. Is to know when this grant is ready to change its status, because all the operations that need to be performed has been already finalized. Okay, so this is all regarding the closure of the grant. If you don't have further questions, we are going to jump very quickly into the reporting side, because we have to cover a few reports in ECC and then BI. So let me open just a small presentation that I created again. Very, very easy one for you. And yeah, here we are. Reporting introduction. We have mentioned during the whole training that it is very important, the reporting of these grants. That's why, in fact, this one of the aims why this new system of creating or tracking this funding incomes coming from donors has been created in the system. Because this, let's say, with this structure in our system, these grants, these cost objects, their reporting is easier. It can be done, more in detail. So we have two types of reporting during the whole life of the grant. We can, or we have to, report to donors, and we have internal reporting for our daily job, for our records, for us to check that we are doing things properly according with the donor agreement. So we have a report to the donor, final certified financial reporting, or substantive reporting of line and interim financial reports. We will see them now after one small break. And then we have internal reporting. For internal reporting, we can use ECC reports and BI reports as well. ECC reports, I don't know how familiar you are with these reports. They are real-time reports. They provide real-time data and are used for ad hoc requests. What is happening right now, exactly right now, you will have the answer. Business intelligence, BI, in the analysis area. In this part, the power users in this case can create reports based on information of the analysis area and format them, customize them, and make them available for standard users. The only thing that is that if you remember from these foundation trainings that we were having, this BI data is not real-time data. It's refreshed every 24 hours from the ECC source, coming from ECC source. Okay? And then we have the BI formatted reports that are the standard BI users reports that can be run, and they are already pre-formatted and cannot be changed. Okay? And they can be saved as well, PDF and print or whatever. Okay? So these are the three types of internal reporting that we have. We are going to start now with ECC reports for you to see the 10 reports related to grants. Let's go to the first one. This first report is called Cash Balance GM Budget Release. CGM Budget Release. Let me jump into the system because I want to show you. Let me save this change of status of the grant. I'm going to show now in the training environment something because I think it's interesting that you will see it, and then we will jump into production. This cash balance GM budget release has two views. Let me load it for you to see. Two views. The cash inflow, this is based on the receivables recorded, and the available cash balance for a specific grant, and this one, the available cash balance, is the view used to determine the budget amount to be released based on the cash availability. So one of the main usages of this report is for the GM account approver to check if the cash is available before the budget is released. Okay, so let's check. That's why I came into the training environment, because I wanted to check one brand new grant just created in the system. Let me select, for example, I changed the status, this one. Okay, let's go to the cash inflow option. Sorry, this report requires, apart from a grant or a range of grants, the fund here, and the fund in this case would be this, the external fund for this grant. 32 DDN. Sorry, DDN. So let's run it. It's taking time, but here we have our fund, external fund, and if we open the folder, we have our grant. So I don't know why it's showing. Let me, the cash inflow, so it's 0. Let's go to this available cash balance that is giving us more information. Yeah, here we are. This screen is showing us more information. What can we see? We don't have a release budget now. Why? Because the budget has been already released. Do you remember we did it in the demonstration? Available release budget is or the whole budget, because we didn't create any fund commitment, any purchase order, or track any expenditure on this grant. So the whole budget is available. And what about the cash? The cash available is here, you see? So this is very important to be checked before releasing the budget. Okay, in this case is the training environment. Let's go now into production. Just let me log in production, because in production we will have more interesting data. Here we are, P1A. Okay, and let's run the same report for a leave grant. This one is the first one. Let's select this one. We have selected some simple grants for you to see the reports with real data. Here we are. Let's see, 32 ELE, and our grant is going to be for Belgium, this one. So let's see the second option. Okay, let's show both cash inflows in this case. One more thing, while the system is charging all the information, we have two output options, by fund or by fund grant. Anyway, if you charge it, run it by fund, you can split it afterwards. So let's see it. Just by opening this folder, it's taking a long time. I don't know why, because this grant is not very doesn't have many transactions. So let's see. And these reports can be run by the grants management user and grants management approver. Okay, so let's wait for the system. Danny, maybe you can want to share with them this job aids. Maybe you can explain them because it's taking ages. This, yes.
Okay, perfect. So if you want to pass the ball to myself.
Okay, so while we are changing the report, Daniel is going to share with us very important information. Let me pass the ball to him. Yes.
Okay. So while the ECC report loads, I just want to share with you that actually it's applicable for ECC and BI. ECC meaning transactional reporting and BI meaning business intelligence reporting. So there is an URL, Moja. Okay. Yes, moja.un.org, Moja-reporting, or you can Google Moja reporting. You will be landed to this web page. So basically, you have different modules in Moja, from accounts payable to funds management, general ledger, travel, treasury, source to acquire, and so on and so forth. One of the models that you can see here is grants management. So basically, once you click in each of these icons, you would see a list or an inventory of T codes related to transactional reporting in ECC, and a list of BI reports for that particular module. So if we click on grants management, what we shall see it's in the module itself a list of all BI reports stored in production. I'm scrolling down, and then at the very end you'll see a list of 8-9 ECC reports that basically Sol will not have time to go through all of these reports, but you basically can go directly to click on the link. There you will see the role in Umoja who will be accessing this T code. So that's important. In case that you do not have access, please do request through your SLO and service desk in your mission one of these roles. Okay, and then on top of that there is a link to a job aid for this particular report, this particular ECC report. And from there, you can go through all the different screenshots and all the different scenarios that you can apply to these T codes. In this case, for example, the available budget balance report. This is a T code, and you have a very complete and specific step-by-step approach, and the job aid is quite useful. On top of that, if you want to go through any particular BI reports that we shall go in a few moments from now, then you'll see the roles who will access these reports and the job aids linked to the BI reports as well. But do not forget that there is a URL only devoted for Umoja reporting, ECC, and BI, and even the portal as well if we are talking about source to acquire. So it's actually out of the scope of grants management, but I think it's useful for you in case that you didn't know that this URL is accessible, available for you, so you can download all the material you need in terms of reporting. Over to you, Sol.
Thank you, Danny. So I have to tell you guys, probably you already know, Danny is our super expert in reporting. So all the things that you want to know about reports, ECC, BI, he's very well. He's great. Okay, thank you, Danny. So here we have our report. So we selected the option. We were, sorry, in this, let me refresh you, in this cash balance GM budget release report, in the cash inflow. So we have received the cash, but this, as I mentioned, this grant is already alive, so it makes sense. The cash has been received, okay? And let's change the view. Hope it will not take this to see this available cash balance. Here we are. You see, we have the fund and then the grant here. And here we have information, very interesting information, the release budget, the total budget, pre-committed, expenses, total committed, all information related to the grant. Very, very interesting one, related to cash, okay? Let's change now and let's see a second interesting report. You have all the information as Danny mentioned in this your base, but just very quick review of the main ones. The next one is called grant line item detail. This report, let me load it for you, is this one, grant line item detail. Difficult to remember, but you can save it in your favorites. The reports are by line item, and the user can input a grant or a range of grants or funds to extract information. We will receive detailed information, sponsor program, sponsor class, reference documents, posting dates, whatever. And we can add subtotals and differences. Let's run it, and you will see it in a better way. Here we are going to run it only for our grant, this one that we selected. We are going to see how many things we can do here. These are all the lines. Let's say accounting entries, commitments, pre-commitments. We will see it now in detail. Let me try to amend it or configure it for me. I'm going to put at the very beginning grant. We have some columns that, because you know, let me show you. We have many columns here, but sometimes it's very difficult to read it, so you know that you can customize the view, put some columns here in the, let's say, the main part of the screen, the part that you can see without scrolling. You can hide some fields, you can group, you can filter. In this case, just let me put all the important fields, in my opinion, or the most important together. For example, the GM value type, grant value. Let's. Sorry, I am not sharing my. Oh, sorry, sorry, guys. Wow. Now it is. Sorry, I forgot sharing. Just let me repeat all the things I said. This is the T code of the grant line item detail report. Just let me do it again. I just type a grant, but you can type a grant or a range of grants or funds and run it. I selected my grant. Imagine this is my grant and I want to check the status, so I run it. And I was telling that you have a lot of fields that are here available for you to check, but my advice is to create your own layout where you can see at first sight, just without scrolling, the most important information for you. In this case, I was about to do that. I'm going to add, as I mentioned, the GM value type. It's a very important field. Here I have it. So let me, GM value type, let me put it just after the grant. GM value type, the sponsor class that is here. Sponsor class, I want it the very beginning as well. Web here. Ref document number, reference document number is here. Let me put it on top first and then here. And let's say the currency local and the currency. Let's go currency local currency. Here it is. Okay. And let's find the currency itself, currency, and let's add it. I think with this is enough. Currency, next one. Only one is not okay. Let me find it. What else? What else? I don't know if you know how to create your own layout. I will not explain it here, but if you are interested, just let us know. It's very easy. Currency, here it is. Let me, local currency and currency, that's it. So now, you see I have put here at the very beginning the columns that are, for me, more useful to have in this first side of the report. And you can save this layout, for example, by clicking here, creating your own whatever, and save it. So whenever you load this report, you can apply the layout and you don't have to configure it manually once again. So let's check which information we have in this report. We have our grant, because we selected a specific grant, the sponsor classes that were selected for budgeting when this grant was created, the local currency and the currency that in this case is the same, is US dollars, and the different documents that have been impacting the state this grant. We have the posting date as well. One very interesting thing that you can do is order by posting date ascending, or sort in ascending order, to see in which order these transactions to this grant were performed. Okay. More interesting things, for example, this value type, grant management value type. Let me open the, here you have all type of transactions that were done against these grants. Purchase requisitions, purchase orders, whatever, okay? So we are going, just as an example, probably you will know more useful ways of displaying this information. I'm going to create subtotals per value type. I will click on the subtotal screen. So let's see, for example, here we have the 99, that the 99 correspond to expenses. Let me show you, expenses, this grant, and we have this amount in expenses, let's say. A different one, for example, the R1, the released budget. Let's go to check for this R1 value type, so we can see, but we already saw it in the previous report, that the whole budget has been released. And in fact, here you have the documents that supported this release of the budget. Let me click on this. Here we are. You see, for this specific class, contract services, or the cost, project support cost, this is the document, the release of the budget, you see? So you can check the supporting document. Let me check, for example, for this 99, this document for expenses, we have here, see, our document type here, one invoice with earmark fund, and you can check the document that was created for this, specific transaction. So this is one application of this one. Let me remove this and let me summarize by sponsor class. Here we have a different view, a summarization of the amounts grouped by sponsor class. So you can check, okay, for open other costs, by VC cash, contracts and services. So you can just check, or the IDC, the program support costs, is everything here, and the supporting documents. Okay. What else? You can display as well the WBS element. In this case, let me put this column here. In this case, we don't have any, maybe because this grant was not linked to any WBS element, but we will have for sure a funded program. It's somewhere over here. But you know, if we have a project in place, you could track for which WBS element all of these transactions were done. Okay. So this is the grants management line item display report. Let's move to the next one. This is the one that Danny was showing us in the when he showed us how to check the reports, the job aids, is the available balance by grant. This is very important. Where is my mouse? Here it is. This is the CGM. Okay, Daniel, I think he's going to send you this link to the job aids in the chat for you to have it. Let me show here the transaction. This is a new report called Available Balance by Grant. This is an overview for a funded grant, and it's aggregated, this report. So we can have the output by fund and grant, by fund, grant, and fiscal year, or by fund, grant, program class, and fiscal year. I always select in this option because it's the more detailed one. And let's see how it works. We have the grants funding summary and the grants funding detail, and we can, exactly as for the previous reports that we explained, we can run it by grant or set of grants, fund or grants. So let's select one unique grant, in this case, to not mix the information, the one that we were displaying, and run the report. Let's see it. This is a very detailed one, you see, and it's aggregated, already aggregated by several things. The grant, sponsor program, sponsor program class, fiscal year, you see it's totally aggregated. We have several fields, unreleased budget, released budget. We can see here that the whole amount has been released. The total budget here, funds block, funds reservation, pre-commitments, obligation or commitments, actuals, total committed, and available release budget and available total budget. See? So this is an aggregated. I think from this one you cannot check directly the document, but for this one we have the line item, the previous report, but this one is like kind of summary, and it's I think it's very useful because first time you can see all the information related to the grant. Okay, so we have this one. Let me show you one more report. All of you know it, I think, because it's the FMABCR02, the available budget. But we can run it, FMABCR02. We can run it for, just let me change the control layer. Set 1. Yeah, we have here the T code. We can run it for a specific grant, and this will limit the report only to the transactions affecting the grant. We can enter a fund as well, so we will see a list of grants or a list of fund centers. And if we select the fund center or funded program, the system will generate only transactions for this specific fund or fund center. So in this case, you know this very well from the fund, let's say, side of the system. But now we are going to run it for, in this case, for a grant. We will see the approved budget, the consumption of the budget, and the budget balance. Now, is it okay? Can you hear me? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. So let's type our grant again, 32 Bell, and run this report. So we have our funded program and the split for 2015 and 2016. So let's navigate deeper, you see you can select the year and click on this add hierarchy. And let's do the same for this one. What can we see now? That the available amount for this grant is this value, and it's, I think it was the same that we were checking in previous reports. The initial amount, $30,000, it was the contribution coming from the donor, the whole contribution, and how this budget has been consumed through the, different fiscal years, 2015, 2016. I don't know, maybe, I think these are the main reports that we can run in ECC. Anyway, you can play with them if you have time. If you have already a grant in your vision, you can play with them, and it's the best way of learning how they work and to customize them yourselves according to your needs. So I think we are going to jump, if you agree, because today we are supposed to finish at 11:30. So before the break, just let me show you this slide, because we are going to move to the BI reporting. It's very important for you, and I think for some of you is more, let's say, it's an unknown part of this reporting. So we want you to see them, these reports, BI reports, and we have two main BI reports related with grants, and that are mainly reports to donors, the interim financial report to donor and the final financial report to donors. These reports are based on the 8 approved reporting categories that are exactly the same as the sponsor program classes: staff and other personnel costs, supplies, commodities and materials, equipment, vehicle and furniture, including depreciation, contractual services, travel, transfer and grants to counterparts, and general operating other direct costs and indirect support costs, the PSC class. So if you agree with me, we are going to break 5 minutes. And just after the break, Danny kindly will show us these 2 reports in BI, in the system, okay? So any question before we will break and before we will show these BI reports? No questions at all? Okay, so let's see each other back again at 11, if it is okay for you. 11, we are back with the BI reports. Thank you. This session is recorded just in case some of you cannot attend to any of those. So just let me give the floor again to Danny. Sorry, but he's back. He's back with the VI reports.
Okay, thank you, Sol. So let me continue. So this is the Umoja reporting site. As we saw before, there is an ECC part and a BI part in terms of inventory of reports, and obviously we have several modules in the system to touch upon. There are plenty of them, but let's take a look at grants management for now. We go there. The main or the majority of the reports are related to BI. Most of them are formatted reports, and there are a few T codes, a few ECC reports with the T codes here in the 3rd column, where you can go through. I think that Sol already touched upon a couple of them, the 1st and the 3rd one, but you can go through the rest of them and go and download the job aids as well. So that's up for now for ECC reporting, and then for BI we do have a list of them. We are only going to see one report for BI, which is the interim financial report to donors in US dollars. That basically it's an interim / final report to donors. we could say, in a way, that BI it's more devoted to reporting to donors in the module of grants management. And if you do want to go through an analysis of your grants and the master data, open items, and the rest of the transactions for your grant in particular, it's important that you know how to work with CCC, right? Although there are some reports in BI related to the grant itself, not only for reporting to the donors, but I will just only mention that there is one related to the outstanding advances, status of outstanding advances. There's a BI formatted report, and this is the description. So it's going to enable grants management users to review comprehensive status of pass-through grants, issuance of budget POs, advance to the implementing partners to record all expenditures and outstanding balance of advances. So in a way, you have 3, 4, 5 reports, internal reports. That's so-called internal reports for grants management, but the majority of them will be devoted only for reporting to the donors. That's why if we run the reports in BI, and let me go back to the system, this is BI, and I'm going to go to the folders grants management. Over there, you'll see a list of web intelligence and analysis workspaces. There are plenty of things to show. Obviously, we don't have time to go through all of them, but the idea for today's session is to go through the interim financial report donor in US dollars new. This one is the one that will give you an insight of the report that the donor needs to have in the interim period and in the final period. And you'll see that this is an official data coming from the UN. That's why once you print or you send to the donor this report, it has the UN logo. It's already pre-approved. It's formatted based on the auditors, IPSAs, and so on. So it's like a public record of the transactions and expenditures for each of the grants that we have received as a UN. So so please feel free to take the floor whenever you deem necessary. So I double-click to the report, and first of all, we have a couple of scenarios. First one, it's like a basic one. So we are going to go and see an S1 grant, a basic grant. So first, let's go through the prompt summary. So the prompt is basically the window that opens up once you double-click on the report in BI. So this is basically like a T code, right? When you go and click on a T code, you have to fill in several values and several fields. So in a way, it's this prompt in BI, it's a T code. And well, the system, it's telling you, please at least fill 2 mandatory fields, which are the first 2. That's why you have here an asterisk or a star in the first 2. Those 2 fields are mandatory. The rest are optional. So first one is posting period. So this will be the range of time from start to end value where you may find transactions in the grant, right? So it doesn't have to have the same data as your validity of the grant, but you're just telling the system to retrieve a particular grant or a list of particular grants for a range of period that it's subject to receive transactions. So in our case, let's put it from January 1st, 2016 to the end of 2025. So it's a big range of years. Then the second mandatory field is the fund hierarchy. Okay. Basically, if I refresh the values here, you'll see all the different master data elements subject to be picked up. Basically, this represents the fund hierarchies in production. Okay. So if you're not really familiar with them, or you don't know exactly which one it's better to pick, because this is a mandatory field, I suggest you to go to all fund groups if you click on all fund groups and you pass it to the right, you basically are overseeing all the funds in the system that will for sure have a grant inside. So, let's say a grant in the parallel module in grants management. So first is the posting period, second the funds hierarchy, all fund groups. So we know that the grant will be for sure in any of these groups. And then we have the fund hierarchy node, which can be comprised of several funds or only one fund, depending on the level of the node and the way the hierarchy is built. But it's not mandatory, so we will leave it blank. The fourth one, it's a grants relationship hierarchy. Okay, this is a very important one because in this field you will type in the exact grant that you want to show in your report. So if you know exactly the S1 grant, the simple grant, if you know exactly the code for an M1 grant, a main implementation grant, R1 resource mobilization grant, or even a pass-through grant, you're going to type it in here, the code, like S1 DDM, 32 DDM, and so on, and then you look it up in the system, it will appear, and then you will pass it to the prompt. So in a way, this report is not meant really to report on a several number of grants, but it's important that you identify the grant that you want to report upon. You identify it in the fourth, in the grants relationship hierarchy here, and then you run the report. Okay, so it's better to look up for specific grant here. So there is a couple of ways to look up for specific grants. I want to draw your attention to this part of the prompt and this small black arrow. If I click on the drop down, you see that I can either look up for the case, so meaning that I'm going to type like keywords that represents like the title of my grant, like, I don't know, Nigeria, strengthening institutional capacity, and so on, and I can put some asterisks there. Or I can search in key. If I search in key, what I'm doing is basically I'm going to look up for the code, the record related to the grant, like S1-32 DDM, stuff like that. So because I already, let's say that I do not know the key, the number, the code of my grant, but I know a specific word related to my grant, which in my case is Planetech. What I'm going to do is I'm not going to search in key. I'm not going to match case. I'm just going to search on the database, and I'm going to use the wildcards and put Planetech, because I know by heart that this is a keyword in the title of my grant. So I'm going to close my search with another asterisk. So the system is going to retrieve all the grants with this word in its title, regardless the type of grant, S1, R1, M1, because we are going to look only the database for the words. So now I'm going to click on search, and sometimes that takes a while. So I'm going to leave it there. In the meantime, what I did is I already downloaded these grants previously, because I knew that it might take some time. So let's say that this is the report itself. As I said before, whenever you download the BI report, you'll see a UN logo with a header of the basic information related to the fund, the grant. This is the key that we were talking before. The key is the record, the alphanumeric code that represents your grant. You see here Planetech. This is the word Planetech Italy contribution for a project MMR set 39, and this will be the final report for this period of range of years that I have done before. So what we are going to see in this type of BI reporting, this is the header. First, the income. So basically the contributions pledged by the donor itself. So we can say that Italy has contributed for this particular project, $4,800. So this is the voluntary contribution from the donor itself. And if we do have a transfer from another grant, or our grant is transferring some fund to another grant, we will see here a number. In this case, it's not applicable. Yes, Sol, over to you.
Just let me jump in. For example, if we have a P grant or an implementing partner in the process, here we would find the transfer, do you remember, that we did from our M or S grant to an implementing partner grant, a P grant. Okay? So this is more or less what. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sol. So you see, now I just went back to BI. So it takes 2, 3, 4 minutes, but you see that the system has identified this contribution. So I click on the contribution and I pass it to the right part of the prompt. And then we do have a couple of more fields like a sponsored program and even the currency. But in terms of a sponsored program, really, you can do filter by a sponsored program, but this prompt is not really used to run standard donor report. Why? Because when you run the report for a donor, you want to run it with all the sponsor classes, right? With all the programs from number 1 to number 8, the ones that we identified before, right? So there is no really a business case or a scenario where you just want to report for a particular class only one line out of the 8, right? If the donor is telling you so, you can always filter by specific sponsored program, but usually it's not very used. But it's there in case you want to use it. It's not mandatory. And finally, the currency type is the company code currency, which will be US dollars. So let me recap. I put the posting period where the transactions are going to be occurring, the all funds group. So we are basically launching our report for all funds groups. So there is no restriction there. And then the grant relationship hierarchy is basically the fund we are looking for. We found it, so we click in OK. So take some time. But basically what you're going to see in the screen in BI, remember that this is BI, Umoja BI, it's the PDF that I was showing you before. Okay, so this is BI again. Okay, let me close this part. So you see that BI itself, this is a report, but it's a handout. It's like a public record of all the expenditures in our grant. Let me just show the left panel on the screen real quick. You have here the document summary. If you click on this small document icon, you'll see information on technical information on the report itself. Not very important now. The second one, it's a navigation map. So basically this one is, if you open up all different tabs, these are the tabs in the report. You see that the first one is donor report cumulative, donor report detail, donor report by year. You see that these tabs or these reference are basically the tabs that I have here underneath. So my report itself, it's not only one page, but 4 of them. Okay. Donor cumulative, you can see donor some details information that will go afterwards, and then the expenditures broken down by year, by fiscal year. So if you want to navigate on the left panel by different tabs, you can do it so, or you can just click it on the bottom part of the report. Third icon on my left is the input controls. This is very important. Why? Because basically, and let me just close up these two. Basically, you have here a third input controls, which is final interim. And this is very, very important because this is a way for you to look up for an interim report or a final report. Depending on whether I click here on interim or final, you see that the header changes. Final certified statements of expenditures. If I click on interim, the header changes. So you see that the name of the report, it's interim final report to donor in US dollars new. Well, that's a bit confusing, right? Umoja should change the title of report to final/interim report to donor in US dollars, because you can launch the final report by just clicking on final. Okay, so this is very, very important because it's not only interim report but final. And I want to direct your attention to when we created the grant, when Sol created the grant some days ago, last week, when she identified a couple of lines on the reports that are subject to be sent to the donors. There are 2 of them minimum, which are the interim report and the final report. These ones in BI are the ones that Sol was mentioning the other day. I hope that's clear. Let me move on. So let me open up the other 2 sponsor program. Here you can navigate to different sponsor programs that are impacting your grant. In this case, we only have one, which is UNODC MMR in Myanmar. So, but if we did have some more sponsor programs being impacted by this S1 grant, then we will see the breakdown here in this window. In our case, we have only one, so it's all values. Let me go up to the fund, and we have the fund. This is the FM ledger, let's say, impacted by grants, which is 1,000 / is a 3280K, is trust fund subaccount for UNDCP. But if we did have an implementing partner, then we would have the FM value with 33, as Son explained before, and we can show to you an M grant after this one, so you'll see the two FM, the 2 funds impacted in FM once we create this grant. So it's important that you understand how these icons in the left panel work. Very important. Input controls, the 3rd one, where you can see or you can identify whether it's a final or an interim report, and then the different funds and sponsor programs impacted by your fund. Then on the right side, obviously, if you navigate through the different tabs, you'll see the report, the official information coming up from BI, where you can print out, and the Director of Accounts Division, the date, will sign up in case that it's important from the donor. And obviously, what we can see here, besides the income part, which is the expenditures. Basically here what we have the 8 categories of the sponsor classes that were broken down initially in the shell of the grant. First one, staff, supplies; second one, third, equipment; contractual services, travel, transfer and grants to the implemented partner or to other beneficiaries; and the general operating and other direct costs. Here we can see that we have $82 for general operating and other direct costs, 82, and basically the majority of the funds used in this grant, S1 grant, has been targeted for staff and other personal cost, which is $3,739 out of the $4,800. Okay, obviously, I think there is $7 in travel as well. You see? $7 in travel. God knows where that is coming from. But in a nutshell, this is what you can expect from this report. Very straightforward information. Income in the right part, in the upper part, the breakdown of expenditures in the middle part, and then an overall numbers of how the expenditures and the income is behaving, and then if it is the case, and then you want to print out, then a part where the director can sign, and the date itself. In the third tab, we have the donor report by year, important as well, because some grants are jumping from several fiscal years, so they do incur in expenses not only in one fiscal year but in several. So if that is the case, you'll see the summary of expenditures in 2016 and 17, and the rest up until 2025. Remember that this is the posting period that I did ask the system to come up with initially. And then finally, we have the filter selection. This is not a report itself, but it's a summary of the main coding block that you are using for this report, which is the funds. This is the record created in the fund ledger in Umoja, the grant itself with the key and the let's say, the description of the grant, and then which is the sponsored program impacted. So it's not a report, but it's just a overall like a table with the coding block related only to this grant. So I don't know if we have questions. Over to you, Sol.
Just one thing, Danny. Can we jump to the second tab again, to the donor? Can you hear me, Danny? Is it okay? Yeah, perfect. So if you scroll a little bit down, just for you guys to realize of something, you see that there is a section called Total Indirect Support Costs. And if you see just upper, we have indirect support cost for United Nations and indirect support cost related to the implementing partner. Remember, because this is very important and some people is not understand these two concepts very well, we have two types of indirect costs. The indirect cost that UN, let's say, has to, let's say, assume or pay, if these indirect costs are calculated based on the classes that are IDC relevant. And when we create the grant, this is all collected under the PSC UN sponsor class. Okay, so this is the indirect support cost of the UN. And then we have the indirect support cost related to the implementing partners that will only appear in our grant when we will have an implementing partner in place. So these are two different classes that are tracking our indirect support cost or in our grant implementation. Okay, so here you can see it very easily. So the first one should correspond to the PSC UNXP class, and the second one to the IP indirect cost. Okay, so I think it's clear this part. Okay, thank you, Danny.
Thank you very much. So yes, it was important to point out that exactly that's the place where they can find the indirect costs. So what you can do, this report you can export to PDF. Basically, here in the main navigational menu in the upper part, you export. You have several options. You can export to Excel or PDF. PDF obviously it's I think it's more useful in our case. So once you click in OK and then you open, you'll see basically the same thing that you can see in BI, but in a PDF format, with the four tabs of report, four tabs of seeing the same situation by detail, by year, and finally with the summary of the prompts that you have used. So this is quite useful for you to print out and even send to whoever you deem necessary. So more things. Let me just put it in 100%. No, let's use better 100%. So I'm going to run the report again. This report is interim financial report to donor in US dollars new. We do have some other ones, for example, in euros, but this is the one that we thought that it was better to show if it is the first time that you're witnessing how the BI for grants management work. So let me double click again and change the prompt just a little bit to see an M1 type of grant, right? Remember that the first report was targeting a very simple one, grant S1. Now we're going to see whether if we can find a specific grant M1. So for the transactions, I'm going to start putting yes, 25. It's okay. So here I'm going to use all funds in this last part here. All fund groups. Put it to the right. And then hierarchy, I leave it blank. And the grant relationship hierarchy here, I know exactly which is the code for my grant. Now I'm going to look up for the key. So what I'm going to put here is an asterisk, M1, because I know exactly that which is the key, the record, the alphanumeric code for my particular grant, 32 DDN dash 30 246, and then I close it up with another asterisk. So this is my grant, my M1 grant, and that instead of looking in the database, I'm going exactly to look in my key, searching key. So make sure that I'm searching in key, and then I click on look. And obviously the currency tab, it's US dollars. Okay, while this takes some time, I can show to you that you can always save this report in your favorites. So let's say that you are comfortable with this report. You don't want to export to Excel, but you want to keep it in your profile in BI. It's as easy as clicking on the floppy disk, save as. And this is very tricky, okay? So be here with me. You see that these public folders are basically the production folders. So obviously you cannot save your own reports in production, but what you can do is save it under your favorites folder. So you have to click on favorites folder, and there you'll have a list of folders. I created one for grants. It's as easy as clicking here on new folder. Okay, I did create previously this folder. I put the name of grants, so I double click. And I'm going to put here, the file name is going to be test2 grants refresher, for example. And I can save this report as it is in my own folder, private folder in BI. Okay. So it's looking up for the report. Still, it takes some time. Okay, so let me go exactly to the other one. So let me cancel this one. Let's say that you want to print the report. You have here an option in printing, but for this particular formatted reports, it's better always to click on export and export to PDF. And then from there, you see PDF, from there you will be able to print it in your own computer. Then if you only want to print one particular tab, you just have to untick or tick based on your needs, okay, here in the upper panel. As well, I do encourage you to go through these different options in the upper menu, navigational menu, because you have different options for you, very useful. So let me go back to the report. You see that my prompt already found 2 records, but basically it's the same one, multi-donor grants in Ethiopia. So I'm going to select both of them by clicking Shift in my keyword, multi-donors grant, OCHA, Ethiopia. So let me put it on the right panel. So my prompt is ready, so I can click in OK. So you'll see how this report is going to look like, and how, which are the main difference between the S1 report and the M1 report. So the system is retrieving the data. And obviously, if you already are familiar with BI, you know that you can schedule these reports, and these reports can be sent directly to your Outlook inbox. So if you want to know just a little bit more about reporting in BI, the basics, you can always join our academies in Valencia or some other places. So this is a report. Initially, it doesn't look very different from the other. It does indeed have more information and more data. Okay. But main difference here, the code is an M1 grant, right? We already know that this is we are related to the framework 2. So it's a multi-donor grant to OCHA in Ethiopia. It's an interim certified financial statements, and this is the range of dates that we put initially, and expressed in US dollars. Obviously, trust fund, it's a fund that comprises several donors, right? At least 2. So how we can see the number of donors that are contributing to our trust fund. Okay, so an easy way will be go to the filter bar on the upper. And this is tricky again. Forgive us, because sometimes BI in Umoja is not very straightforward. But once you click on filter bar, there is another small icon underneath that says click icon to add simple report filters. You click there, others, And from there, you'll see a list of items that you can select from, and from there you can filter. From fund to fiscal year, quarter, sponsored, the program itself, and some others. But let me just go, first to the basics, which is the grant itself. So remember that an M grant has hanging from an M1 several R1 grants, right? So each of those grants, R1, will be identifying one donor. So if I go to the grant and click on the grant, I'll see a drop-down menu, which is grants values. And from there, if I click in the drop-down, I will see the list of donors contributing to my trust fund. From Germany to Norway, Sweden, and because in this record, it's like duplicated in the system. That's why you saw two records when I was in the prompt. I think that it's duplicating even the donors itself, but it goes from Germany, Norway, Sweden, UK, US8, grant transfers, European Commission, Ireland, and then again Germany, UK, and then some Canada. So just for you to understand that it's very important. If you want to identify all donors, you go to the filter by grant, and there you'll see the list of donors contributing. And more importantly, if you click on one of these donors, like for example Norway, let me click to Norway, their report will change. And the report will first give you the R1 code for Norway, R132DDN 001318, identifying the ER mark contribution only for Norway, and the income and the contribution given by Norway to this particular trust fund for disaster relief assistance in Ethiopia. In this case, Norway is contributing for just a little more than $500,000. And if Norway was contributing in terms of expenses for this particular contribution, then we will see the breakdown of expenditures by the 8 sponsor classes here, from staff, supplies, equipment, contractual services, travel. In this case, we don't have any expenditures coming from Norway, coming from the contribution from Norway to this particular trust fund. That if for whatever reason Norway is interested in this report, you can always, as I said, go filter bar, click on the grant, and then you select the donor, and from there you can export, print, and send it to the donor itself. Again, it's on not only one tab, but 4 of them, all of them subject to be filtered. The first one is filtered, but the second one, no. Detail. So this is the trust fund as a whole, $17.6 million as a total income, and this is the breakdown of expenditures as a whole as a M1 grant trust fund, broken down by the classes as well. And more things. Let me go to the input controls. Remember that we mentioned previously the several icons on the left panel. Input controls is quite important. Let me go through them again. Fund. We do have 2 of them, and makes sense. Why? Because we have a 32 DDN, which is the trust fund, let's say, created in the FM ledger. And then we have the 33 DDN that is related to the implementing partner in the fund management ledger. So you can report based on these 2 items, or all of them, if you click on all values and OK. But on top of that, if you do have more than one sponsor program, as we saw before, you can select and only report upon those sponsor programs. In our case, we do have 2 of them, FI assets, transactions, and the main one, which is the OCHA DDN 0002. In this case, we did some troubleshooting, and we understand that this FI assets transactions, it's a sponsored program probably created across the board to go through or monitor the transactions related to the assets for the grants. But we will not go deep on that, but just for you to understand that if you want to report for a particular grant only for one sponsor program out of several, then you will have to select here and click in OK. That's the only thing. And then we do not have the third option, which is the final interim report, because this grant has not been finished yet. I mean, the validity of this grant, as Sol explained before, has not been closed. That's why we cannot launch a final report in terms of financial statements. And besides that, besides the difference between an M1 and an S1 type of grant, how both of them are reflected in this report, there is actually nothing more to show you in terms of navigation or features for this report. So let me go back to the main, and with this I can close down. The grants management folder in production in Moya BI. We only saw the one report, which is interim financial report donor in US dollars. We do have plenty of them. Obviously, for the sake of time, we cannot go through in this refresher. There are analysis workspaces and some other reports. Please bear in mind that you can go through these reports and the job aids in the URL that we shared with you in the chat. Even the ECC reports that Sol explained to you before. So I don't see any questions or comments in the chat. They are welcome. In case that you have any doubt, we are here after the session as well. I think that's all from my part. I pass the ball to you, Sol.
Okay, Danny, thanks a lot for this master class of BMBI. Very, very interesting, really. And we are done, guys. Just a few things to remind you. Can you hear me, Danny? Is it okay? Okay. So just a few things to remind you. Let me stop sharing the screen. Oh, I'm not sharing now, I think. No. Okay. So just first of all, Daniel and me would like to thank you all for your patience, because this refresher has been not a refresher, has been very intense, a lot of things to be covered, very long processes, and you have been here learning, and this is really, really appreciated by us, that you are interested, that you want to learn. So we remain at your, for you to support you whenever you need, whenever you want. In fact, on Thursday, from 10 a.m. up to 1 p.m. Valencia time, we will have an open session. We will send you the link right after this session for you to connect if you want to ask us something, if you are trying to do the exercises that you want us to guide you, or to share your screens to show us what you are doing. Whatever you will need, we will be available on Thursday from 10 to 1. And you will receive as well a link to complete a small assessment. It's only 10 questions, very easy questions. You will have all the materials with you, it's very easy to do. Because if you want to get the certificate, remember that you have to complete the exercises and pass this very easy assessment. So you will receive the link as well. And you will have up to Friday the 15th, Friday next week, to complete the exercises and to complete this easy assessment in the system. Moreover, if apart from this open session on Thursday you need extra support, extra help or questions, just send us an email and we will be happy to help you. And I think that's it. Thanks a lot to everybody. Nani, do you want to add something?
Nothing else. Thank you very much, as Sol said before. And it's always a pleasure to do all these WebEx refreshers with her. I think that she did a great job, because this is not an easy topic to I think to touch over a WebEx, because indeed it needs a lot of practice. It needs a lot of hands-on and kind of like a physical interaction between trainers and students. So any comments, any feedback, things that we can improve are very welcomed. So we thank you very much, and I think especially to Sol. Thank you, Sol. Bye.
Thank you, Danny, to you too, and to all of you guys. And let's hear you soon, hopefully on Thursday. If you have doubts, if not, thanks a lot for coming. And that's all. Okay. Bye, guys. Bye, and thank you.